some opening statements. The meeting is being recorded. This is a meeting of the Youth Education and Cultural Affairs Committee of the CB2 in Brooklyn. It's being recorded for public access in accordance with the open meetings law. It's a practice for community members, for committee members to have their cameras on, and anyone who's presenting to have the camera on when they're presenting. Otherwise, people will be muted, and I'll make it known when there are topics that people can comment on so that the agenda runs smoothly. Before I officially start, I want to call for a moment of silence so that we reflect on the precious lives that were lost at the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. Thank you. Okay, so first we introduce our members. I'm Betty Flybush, I'm the chair. Nick, introduce yourself, please.
Sorry, I was snacking. I'm Nick Ferreira. I am a committee and board member.
And Santia.
Hi, I'm Santia Felicity, committee member and board member.
Thank you. And as other members come, when there's the right time in the agenda, they'll introduce themselves. Okay, so we'd like to adopt the agenda. Are there any objections? Okay, we're not going to approve the minutes because we would need a vote. So we would like at this point to welcome our guests and the artist Fred Wilson, who will be presenting about the public artwork for Borough Hall. And I read about Fred Wilson, and it's really remarkable. And we'd love to hear how your work has come to Brooklyn. Yeah, so I know that you all have a presentation.
Great. We have screen sharing ability.
Taya manages that. Let's see.
Okay. Well, I think, I don't know, Michaela,
go ahead.
if you want to share I'll just do a quick introduction and then we can turn it over. And I guess if we have technical difficulties, we'll let you know. I'm Elizabeth Musella. I'm the Senior Public Art Coordinator with New York City Parks' Art in the Parks program. You might be familiar with some of the things we've done in CB2 in recent years. Photoville has been a really popular exhibition. They'll be coming back soon. We've also, the last really big project we did in CB2 was the handball court in Cadman Plaza. I don't know if you remember that. But that was with Public Art Fund. But our program permits temporary public artworks in parks citywide. It's a wide range of sculpture, murals, fence installations. We work with independent artists, arts organizations, galleries, community organizations, and community groups to install public art around the city. Temporary public artworks can be on view for up to 1 year. The exhibitor is responsible for all aspects of installation, maintenance, etc. This is a project we're really excited about. This was selected as part of the Downtown Brooklyn, I'm probably going to mess up the name, DRI Placemaking Fund project. I don't know if any of you were aware of that. It has a long name and I probably butchered it. But our partners in this exhibition are More Art. I have Michaela Martigani and Shona Hurst here from that organization, as well as Fred Wilson, the artist, who we're very pleased to have with us. I'll turn it over to More Art to speak a bit more about the project and show you a brief presentation. And then I think Fred will also speak about his work.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. Hi, I'm Michaela Martigani, and I am the director, chief curator at More Art. So I'll see if I can share my screen. Yes. Here it is. So I'm here to briefly talk about this public art project that we have commissioned Fred Wilson called the Mine Forge Manacles, Manacles Forge Mine. And here you can see the location. It's going to be in Columbus Park. So basically continuation of Cadman Plaza, right pretty much across from the King County Supreme Court. Sort of midway through the statue of Christopher Columbus and Beecher on the two sides. I'll show you on the next one how it will look like. This is a mock-up, and there will be plenty of space for people to move around the sculpture. And the sculpture is made of iron fencing and bars. And here on the right, you can see some examples of the motifs that are going to be used and overlaid on top of each other. And these are, the sculptures are 10 feet high. And altogether is 18 feet wide from here to here. But the two boxes kind of overlap, and they are connected to each other through that gap. So there is a 4 feet gap between the two, but they're connected for stability. So there is no drilling into the pavement. The structures, we've been working with an engineer to make sure that the structures, one, are weighty enough, and two, are help each other for stability, so that they are completely freestanding and they can't be moved or anything. And there will be a rubber plant sort of underneath to protect the pavement. Inside, you can see there are actually going to be more, but you can see two of these very large African sculptures. So it means also that the structures are can be opened, and people can go in also for maintenance, potentially for performances. We'll talk about that in a moment. But they will be closed to the public. So they will be always locked, and the public can only view the installation from the outside. They can walk around it, they walk through it, but not go in. There will be also a fencing on the very top to also close the top of the structure. And you can see here how the two structures are connected. It's almost like a U shape to give it more stability and strength. And you can also see kind of the scale. So this was an earlier concept mock-up. Here examples of the sculptures themselves, and then I will let Fred talk about the concept itself. I'm not going to it, I'm just going through just the details. And so actually then this is really more for Fred, because this is where the inspiration comes from. But before I turn it over to Fred, I also wanted to mention that the project is going to be up for a year. So it opens on June 21st, 2022. We will be installing the week before that, and it will close in June 23. And we are planning for the warmer months. We are planning on programs every month to take place at the site. So around the sculpture, and we are exploring different genres, so like poetry and dance and music, and a lot of different art forms and artists that address some of the issues that Fred is interested in, and some of the issues that are addressed through this sculpture. And again, I'll let him talk more about that. But there will be a lot of engagement in that location. We know that, for example, on Saturdays, there is a green market. So we will be planning accordingly on one level to maybe maximize the fact that people are coming to the place, but to trying to minimize any kind of interference or problems with the trucks from the market. Any questions before we talk more about the actual concept with Fred?
Yeah, I would like to know if, as part of the programs on site, if there will be a connection for any of the schools, like some type of curriculum that teachers could study beforehand and then they take their students there, or that type of thing.
Actually, that's a very good question. So we have not really planned anything yet about with schools, but we have talked to the Brooklyn Historical Society, that now has a different name. Apologize, and because they do have programs already set up with schools, and so they we talked about collaborating on that, and then coming in and as part of their program have a set of units about this project and some of the issues that are raised by the projects. The whole concept is about gates and borders. That's why you see all these different types of gates on one side and kind of prison bars on the other side. So that is an incredibly rich subject that can allow for multiple points of entry. So it will be actually incredibly fruitful for students in particular to talk about. It is something that we would like to explore further with them, and then potentially also through other avenues. Another thing is that we have been collaborating with the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership, because we are one of the grantees of their Downtown Brooklyn initiative, so we have also been discussing with them how to better engage with schools. So we are also engaging with other downtown organizations that work in a kind of similar fashion. So for them to also use the site as a stage to come and address these issues in different ways. So for example, we've been talking to Mokada, that's one of the Brooklyn nonprofits about potentially staging programs there. So we will get back to you with more details about schools in particular.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from committee members?
But no, just like to hear from Fred, and then maybe there'll be questions.
Perfect. So Fred, it's all yours.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Fred, should I leave the share up? Do you want the presentation up?
Yeah, this part is fine. This might be good to keep on view, this image. Yeah, this project is for me, even though we've been working on it a couple of years, and COVID sort of has changed everybody's plans, it has also been in my mind for much longer than that. This, not specifically this sculpture, but just some of the ideas behind it, and also the materials. I've been wanting to work with metals in a developed way. I've done other projects with institutions like New York Historical Society, and used some of their art, their collections in a installation for one of their exhibitions. But this is really kind of culminating in a project that is long time coming and long time interest. It's called, the project being called Mind Forged Manacles, Manacle Forged Minds. Really, it kind of dovetails with a lot of the things I've been interested in. Mind Forged Manacles, in case you're not familiar, is a line from William Blake, and incredible thinker and also artist, and in his own kind of ahead of his time and in his own world in England a long time ago. And his interest in manacles was not physical manacles, but in case you're not familiar, it is more how one kind of imprisons themselves in their minds by already kind of keeping themselves from having an open mind about various issues, various topics, and which kind of closes down any kind of conversation, any kind of learning among individuals, and kind of being a free thinker. And that was actually something my father was interested in William Blake. He's not an artist. He was more of a philosopher. So he even though he's a civil engineer, so he really kind of sort of imbued in me this, even though that was his thing, all of a sudden this notion of imprisoning your mind in and not learning, not developing, and not keeping yourself from growing, being afraid of difference, being afraid of other issues that might be keep you from developing further in your own way of thinking. But in addition to that, because I'm an artist, the physical, the visual is really the way that I would speak about things. And I'm half my family's from the Caribbean. They came to Brooklyn in late 1920s, bought a brownstone, and that's where my mother and her sisters grew up, and I ended up being with them quite a lot of the time, but being there and then going to the Caribbean every so often made some interesting connections for me as an adult artist. In certain countries in the Caribbean, you have because of perhaps not really developed or strong security, or being able to afford strong security. Many people have gates and fences around their homes, but this also is true in Africa and true in a lot of third world. And in order to sort of live with this kind of thing around your home, they become very decorative, so that they're not sort of ugly bars and just makes you feel imprisoned yourself, which is what it interests me, that while these homes of the people who had a bit more money than others in the islands or in Africa or in other places around the world, you were keeping those people out from inside your home, but also you're sort of still imprisoned within this structure. And I just found that duality quite fascinating. And then in addition, the whole notion of bars and manacles and what they mean outside of the Caribbean, and certainly imprisonment and mass incarceration of African American people, men particularly, comes to mind, and the experience of that. My stepfather, I also had a stepfather, who was a dry cleaner and tailor, and once had a job that brought him into the prison system to teach dry cleaning and tailoring to the inmates, and which he invited me to, as a teenager, to come into the prison and just sort of experience it, which was quite profound, obviously, because you have to go through many gates and bars and layers of that to get to where he was working, and certainly to get to anywhere in the prison. And so being around the inmates who were quite happy to be working in this area, because it gave them a skill that they could take when they were out of prison. But it was kind of a profound experience of being enclosed and shut off from society. And so these, lots of things germinate when you're an artist, and sometimes they come together, and you realize, oh, that's where that was from. And that's kind of how this kind of notion came to me to build something like this, and the kind of strange exposition of beauty, which is a subject I'm very much interested in my work, and kind of the underbelly of beauty sometimes. All these notions came together for me with this project. The African statuary, of course, is kind of represents people, and of course, with our border situations and the imprisonment of children, and just all the things that that fences and gates and bars represent. But everything is sort of in this project, it's all kind of mixed together as a way to kind of, for the viewer, or myself, to sort of sort out what is important to the society, what is impinging on the society, what is and how much are we kind of not wanting to kind of focus on what exactly is happening, what we were doing. And in this case, by using these decorative fences and gates and bars. So the combination, you'll come to see it as this kind of, well, actually I have never done it before, which is which makes this the most exciting thing I'm doing right now, quite frankly. It's to see this in fruition is really important to me, and and I will also learn something from this, because since you can walk through it, not within the cases with sculpture, but in between, these notions of containment and beauty kind of hopefully will mingle in your mind, and you can sort that out for yourself. The location couldn't be more perfect. It doesn't, this was not the reason that I built it, but it does really seem to me to be important, because where the two public sculptures that are there will, of course, I think one may reflect on either or both, or one or the other, in relation to this sculpture. That's kind of how I'm probably forgetting a whole lot of other adjectives that I've used in the past, but that's I'd be curious if people have questions about this sculpture.
Well, I think it's quite remarkable, and listening to your words about how this came to be, and what you've thought about and experienced through the years is very, very deep. I'm wondering if you plan to visit once in a while just to see people's reactions to it.
Of course, it's my baby. I will be. I'm a New Yorker. I live now in Manhattan, but my studio's in Brooklyn, so I will
Great.
definitely be around, and will definitely want to kind of interact with visitors. Well, as much as they want to interact with me, but just to, I do want to. I mean, it's kind of a learning curve for me. It's one thing to have something in your head for years and years and years, and then as it comes together, when it's there in front of you, I expect to be there a lot because of the because this has been something I've wanted to do for a very long time, or something like it. And so it's kind of, for me, it's a beginning of work, making a series of works related to these subjects, and so I'm just thrilled, and it's great to have it in the public, within the public, rather than in a gallery for its first reveal for me, because then I can get to experience what real people think besides the art world, and so it's a complete win-win-win situation for me, and hopefully for the viewers as well.
Terrific. Are there any comments or questions from people on our committee? I don't see on my screen who's here. I know that Nick and Santia are there. Did Dorothea join us?
She did, but it looks like she's dropped off.
Okay.
Cynthia, you want to go?
No, I'm just overwhelmed by it. So I
Yeah.
can't really put my feelings into words right now. I just look forward to visiting it often.
Oh,
Yeah.
great, me too.
Yeah, it's very impressive. Yeah. I'm curious as to how it will be kept clean, and if unfortunately, if somebody makes graffiti or throws trash in there, or I assume there's not glass, it's open to the air, so trash could fall in. So I hate to think of that, of course, but just on a practical matter.
That's right, we're in New York. So, this is something that, I mean, maybe Michaela has further thoughts about it, but for me, it's it's a no-brainer to come and clean it every so often. I think we haven't spoken about this, just trying to get this whole thing off the ground, but except that we will have to clean it, and having it having each one being able to enter for maintenance and cleaning, as well as for the performers who want to come in and interact with the African figures or the gates or what have you. That certainly would be a part of it. And I think because we're trying to get this rocket to lift off. It's not that we don't have a plan for it. It's just that this is the next step once we've got all the work in place, or at least once we've got the thing under construction as it is beginning to be now.
So are you and the organization, the city, the parks organization, responsible for cleaning the trash out and whatnot, or does that go to a city agency?
So the way it works for temporary public artworks is we do require the exhibitors to maintain the artworks. We don't require them to do like a regular cleaning. That is at their discretion, but our park staff is really good about letting us know if there's something concerning, even if it's just, we've had sculptures where birds have gotten in, and members of the public have let us know about that. But I think the general public has been pretty respectful of the public artworks we do, but we'll have eyes on it, and we've worked with More Art many times in the past, and they've been great partners at addressing anything that might come up. So hopefully we won't need to address any emergencies, but if we do, we have systems in place. And we had discussed with More Art, just regular maintenance and cleaning just to make sure it looks good at all times.
Yeah, we will have a couple of, always have interns that we work with. So we are planning on having them come to check on it and clean any trash out. And just in general, and then like as Elizabeth said, that the park staff will also like alert us to anything urgent, and we can be on call to come and address it as soon as possible.
It's so impressive. I think Dorothea joined. Are you on this call, Dorothea?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
I for some reason I have trouble getting into Zoom now. Maybe I need a new computer, but I'm here.
Oh, I'm glad to see you. Can you introduce yourself, and do you have any questions for the presenter?
No, I'm Dorothea Thompson Manning, and I'm the co-chair of the committee.
And yeah, I'm sure we'll all be visiting this often. It's spectacular.
I
It's
have a
like so
question.
thoughtful. Yeah, Nick.
I was just being very polite and asked Cynthia to go first. So yeah, really awesome, and I live close by, so I'm also very excited to get to go experience it as well. And I didn't even think about birds until that was mentioned, Elizabeth.
It's actually
now
happened more than once that we've had birds trashing our pictures.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they're definitely going to be experiencing this with the rest of us as well. So I did have a question. I'm sorry if you said this already and I missed it. So I was wondering if the design of the gates, the more decorative sort of aspect, was there some sort of connection to, like, are these cultural designs of a press, or they're just beautiful sort of decorative gates?
Yeah, what you see in the Caribbean are just these beautiful decorative gates, and in some parts of Africa too. Yeah, they just there to, in general, they're there to be pretty and just not think about, what they're really there for. And I love when there's that duality of, there's an undercurrent of what this is really about, and you try to make the best of it in whatever fashion you can. And it's become really quite amazing what they do and how much they can do now to kind of keep this facade going. But if you got to live someplace, you might as well make it pretty.
Absolutely. There's a lot of first floor Brooklyn windows that could take some advice. So I did have a sort of one last question, maybe / comment then. So related to the earlier point Betty made about schools, and/or depending on now, I'm thinking camps too, Betty, right?
Right.
Interacting with this. So is there a plan and/or can there be just even signage that has a reflective question or two to help out the adults there who are trying to, facilitate a decent discussion? Sometimes it just takes a question or two, and then everybody can take it from there.
Yeah. No problem. I love that idea. I don't think we've gotten that far with it, unless Michaela thinks of everything. But I'm still focused on making this happen. But no, I love that idea. I think it's important in this public sphere to kind of. I don't like leading people to think certain things about art. I mean, I want them to come to it as open as they can, but also just have enough. Things that you can hook onto to kind of make people think about a little broader than what's this funny thing doing here. So yes, that's a great idea.
Sorry, Fred. If I can add just to that, yes, we will have a sign, and as Fred says, we try to stay away from leading people into one understanding or own interpretation of the work, but the idea is maybe to start from William Blake concept of manacles, and as this barriers, often self-imposed, and so open that concept up to people then from that perspective to look at the work and try to maybe ask themselves questions about what the barriers mean to them, what kind of barriers that they encountered, and especially for children, that may be an interesting way to help them create their own opinion of it.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
was
That's always
thinking-
the tricky part.
Yeah.
Sorry, just as educators, right? You don't want to lead,
Oh.
lead the witness, or like in law. But Fred, you had a purpose. And so, I don't know if it's a secret, but if it's a purpose, and then sometimes just asking people what it makes them think of is enough. But doesn't need to be curriculum. Betty used the word curriculum. That feels overwhelming sometimes, like.
Well, just
like,
some words
talk
that
about?
will
Yes.
help a teacher facilitate a
Right.
conversation, or a camp counselor. Nick is absolutely right. Your work is being installed at the end of June, and there are children in day camps, and they visit the Green Market, or they go to the Historic Society, or they go to walk on the Brooklyn Bridge, or, there are a lot of young people in the area. So I was thinking if maybe there's a one-pager we could send to the organizations and the schools that run the camps and the youth activities, so that they would want to take their young people there, and that the adults would have something to kind of not explain it to the children, but open their mind or ask them, maybe a few leading questions to make them think about what it means to them. So if we have just simple one pager, we could get it out to some of our schools and organizations.
That
We
would be
really
great.
need your help on that. Yes, we'll definitely.
I also wanted to mention one partnership that we do have in place with a local organization, the Center for Court Innovation. We've been talking with them for actually a couple of years, kind of, concurrent with when we kind of started to talk with Fred, and the ideas started to come together, and they approached us to do a program with them with their Brooklyn Justice Initiatives program. So it's an alternative to incarceration program. And so actually around the time that the sculpture is opening, we're having a set of workshops, 2 workshops with some of the youth involved. I think the 18 to 24 age range. That will be led by another artist called George Emilio Sanchez, who will be leading workshops, spoken word workshops, and also performative workshops using some techniques with the Theatre of the Oppressed group, some of their techniques, and we're hoping for them to actually, for the participants that we work with, to actually create something in response to this work. But also we're going to be engaging them past the workshops as well. It's like a self-selecting group who are interested in creating some spoken word pieces in response to Fred's work and these themes as well. And hopefully they might be able to perform something at the sculpture site to help activate the site. So that's something that we actually have in place, and it's going to be happening around, the first set of workshops is going to be happening around the June opening date, and then we'll have another set of workshops later in the summer.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like the idea of the interaction, and not just looking at the work, but that discussion and interaction. Yeah. Does anyone else on the committee have any questions or comments? No. Well, I thank you so much. Fred, I'm looking forward to seeing you there. I know you're going to come
Yes,
often.
definitely.
So, yeah. Are there any closing remarks from our presenters? I mean, I'm just in awe of this. This is quite remarkable.
I had a question, just what's the best way to get, more information about this to you? Should I work with Taya or? just-
Yeah, send it to Taya.
Great.
Yeah, and she's providing her contact information on the chat.
And I just wanted to thank, yes, the person who's writing the chats.
That's Taya.
Yeah, okay, thank you for all the references, amazing, and including finding the poem from William Blake. So that, thank you for that.
Taya is so good at what she does. Okay, so thank you, Taya. So
Michaela, I was thinking the same thing when the George Sanchez things popped up. I'm like, did she know about this already? Like, that was super quick. She's amazing.
Very quick. Thank you.
okay, so again, thank you, and you're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting, or I know that you have other things to do, so that's fine as well.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone.
Okay.
Thank you for letting us share
Yes.
about this. And thank you,
Look
Fred. It
forward.
was great hearing you speak about the work.
Oh, great.
Real treat.
Terrific. We'll see you there
Okay.
at the site sometime.
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay.
Okay.
We have the chair's report. I have a few things to mention to the committee. The first thing, and I think I'm changing my order on this, but we've been eagerly awaiting a special meeting that we can vote on the candidates for district manager. And once we can do that and have somebody chosen and appointed, then we can start filling the other empty roles. I mean, the roles of, the empty seats in the office. So it's really important. Lenny is thinking about having a meeting sometime, I think the second week in June. He hasn't sent the letter yet, but we can't go on like this in the office with just Taya personing the office. And we wouldn't be having a special vote in the summer, which would mean we would have to do this in the fall. So I really urge you, when you get the email from Lenny, to make that time for that purpose. Are there any questions about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's taking so long to reschedule this? There's a lot of time in between these
I
things.
know.
I realize how important it is, and I'm only asking because I appreciate how difficult it is. It's just that no one's asking, to my knowledge, any of us about our schedules. So I'm just wondering what is taking so long to pick a date.
Okay, I'm not privy to all of the information, but my understanding is that they always have to look for a date where there aren't other committee meetings. So they look at the monthly calendar, and we don't do meetings on Friday or holidays, etc. And then there's a question of the space, and there's a question of the availability of the candidates.
Yeah,
That's my
it's a lot
understanding.
of, a lot of moving parts. Okay, thank you.
And I really hope to see everyone at that meeting when it will be called. Okay. So I wanted to also share with you that apparently the Walt Whitman Library has gotten a bunch of funding, and they're going to be doing not just a little this or that, but like a really major rehab, modernization, that type of thing. And they're going to start their community engagement processes to find out what kinds of things people want and need, and how you use the library in this more modern age of technology and so on. So on June 4th, there's going to be a workshop, community workshop regarding the renovation, and we can get you that information. But then there are going to be other outreaches and workshops throughout the summer, and I think early fall, because the more engaged the community becomes in the design and expressing their needs, the more successful the library will be for its community. And talking about the library, the long-awaited Brooklyn Heights Library is having its grand opening on the 8th of June. So unfortunately, we won't get to see the sculpture because it won't be up yet, but it's very close by, the library and the sculpture. You've probably seen in the news, the state legislature has to deal with the mayoral control of the Department of Education. So there've been some recent town hall meetings that were very quickly held. Certainly not giving people notice, but some of the parent advocacy groups have had meetings and are advocating for a very short term. In other words, not to give the mayor 3 or 4 years of control, but to give him 1 year with the proviso that a better system be worked out, rather than each year just giving him, or maybe her in the future, a 1 more year. So that's something that really does affect the schools in terms of their relationship to the community, like what kind of voice parents have. And I think I mentioned to you all that every single superintendent, all, I think 39 of them, had to reapply for their jobs. So there have been town hall meetings this week and last week, where various candidates on Zoom had to present. There were questions from the parent leadership in the districts, and then questions and comments from the public, from parents, teachers, community members. So we'll see if it's the usuals if people get their jobs, or if there's new energy and kind of a new cadre of leadership in the DOE. So that will be interesting to see. Okay, so that is my chair's report. I believe that Taya, you wanted to talk a little bit about the statement of district needs.
Hello. I will make this super quick because I believe some of you may have already received this on a different committee, maybe. There has been a lot of questions and requests for sort of clarification on what the heck this state SDNVR needs process is. So I will keep this super brief and apologize for Brooklyn if you can hear the sirens. Oh, bad timing, 1 second.
As long as they're not coming to you, Taya. Are they coming?
No, I actually live right in between the firehouse and Brooklyn Hospital. So the last 2 years have been real siren-y. Okay, so this picture more than anything else explains why the office staff gets so excited about the statement of needs and budget requests every year. It's one of the very few activities that all 59 of the NYC community boards do at the exact same time. This is written into the city charter budget process, and the community board element actually kicks off the whole process. It's the very first part. And I show this visual just to remind folks, to ground us that we are not making requests for the city or even for the borough. We are only making requests for this little sliver, of which we are all experts, of which you are all experts. This is the reason you were appointed, is because you know this triangle of geography better than anyone else in the city. The audience for this is also significant and much bigger and broader than any other deliberation by the committee. The elected officials review it to inform their understanding of district level needs and priorities. The city agencies, there are, I think, 72 city agencies, but there are 50 of them that are required to meet with all of the community boards borough by borough. So some of you might remember that I'll be sending out meeting invites whenever we get them. They're typically scheduled in September, not super convenient for us, but that's when they happen. 1 second. They also unfortunately happen during the day and they do not record them. But staff always attend, we always take notes. The agencies are required to appear at those meetings, and they are also required to respond in writing to all of your requests. And most importantly, Nick, I was also snacking and I have swallowed something wrong. Most importantly, the Department of City Planning uses your requests to prioritize land use and policy development. So this is pretty important. The timeline is not ideal, and this has been brought to the DCP's attention several times. All 59 community boards are on summer recess in the summers, so it's kind of this awkward pause in the middle. We start brainstorming in May, we draft and plan in June because, let me move this section. The final document is always due to OMB and DCP around Halloween every year, which means that it needs to be ratified at the general board meeting in October. But because our general board meeting falls in the middle of the month rather than at the end of the month, as some other community boards do, that means for all 6 of the working committees, your final chance to weigh in is at your September committee meeting, which is why the committees should be brainstorming in May and June. The office, theoretically, if there were a larger staff, would be helping you with research in July and August, maybe getting letters of support from some of the speakers that have come over the last 10 months and told you about issues in the district. And then in September, the committee solidifies their, I say 10 to 12 committee level requests. Those all get funneled to the full board. And then for those, that 10-day period, the full board has a chance to vote to prioritize on that Google Doc survey that you've been doing the last couple of years.
Got it. Very helpful.
So I've sent you recently 2 links, and I've been trying to streamline this process a little bit every year. So this year it's only 2 links, and they actually both lead to this document that you're looking at. And there's a reason that they're different. The first link, this is what you could consider your dashboard. This first tab, this 101 tab, this is going to be a running list of all of the resources that the city sends us to complete this process between now and September. So that means it's going to be getting a little longer over the summer while y'all are technically on recess. The important things to look at are the items in orange, and especially this one. All of the other tabs, this looks like a lot, it's not. So this tab is all the 101 info. This tab is all of the responses from last year. And I've done the work of going through and color coding them and sorting them so you can look at it really quickly and see what was approved, what was denied, and why. And you can pull some of those over, and then there's just a tab for each of the committees. You can pull requests over to this year if you wish. Parks and Rec got a head start because their meeting was a little earlier than yours, so that's a good one to peek at if you'd like an example. And then this final tab is the automatic repository for the second link. So the second link, I know a lot of people don't like spreadsheets and they don't like Google Docs. So the second link that I sent you is a link to a Google survey. You do not need to have a Gmail account. You don't have to sign in, none of it. So anytime you're walking around, waiting in line, on a bus, walking down the street, sitting around the house on a Sunday thinking, and you have an idea, you can just go to that link and sort of fill out a Mad Libs, which I'm actually going to ask Sakura and Abby to help me do live so you can see how it works. 2 more things. So all of the requests have to be couched as either a capital expense request or an expense budget request, right? So the shorthand way to think about that, a capital budget request is typically long-term one time, over $50,000, and something that's going to provide at least 5 years of public good. So that's often land, buildings, or equipment, right? A one-time big thing. An expense budget request is going to be a near-term routine operating expense. So that means you're requesting something to be added to the regular operating budget of a city agency. It's typically under 50,000, and it's something that you want immediate implementation on. I'm gonna skim over this because I think this committee is good readers, but basically these are some just summaries of some of the tips, what you'll find in that link that's tips for strengthening submissions. If any of, I know some of you have done grant writing before, so it's really similar. The narrative has to be robust. The context has to be really clear. It has to be specific and appropriate. This one, again, looks like a lot of content. Don't worry about the small print. Actually, just step back from the screen a little bit and just notice that there are 7 categories here. The reason I'm showing this is because the 59 community boards have leeway to choose. You have the freedom to choose whatever working committees you want to. So the working committees in every community board are different. We happen to have 6 community boards. Some community or committees, excuse me, some CBs have as few as 4, some have, I think I've seen as many as 9. Regardless, the Department of City Planning uses completely different policy categories, and they all fall under these 7. So there's healthcare and human services, which is sort of part of what HES does. There's infrastructure, services, and resiliency, which is part of what HES does and part of what transportation and public safety does. There's housing, economic development, and land use, parks, cultural, and community facilities, which I think would be a really good working committee topic for us, actually. Public safety and emergency, transportation, mobility, and youth education and child welfare. So this is how the New York City Department of City Planning categorizes all the topics. And it's our job to sort our requests into their categories, which mostly the office does. Go forward, please, that one. Okay, this category is also really important. OMB has been improving their instructions every year, I think. So this year they've been really explicit about saying, do not submit requests that fall into the category of other. And if you look at what these agencies are, I think what's clear to me is it's because these are agencies that are bigger than the geographic boundaries of a district or even a borough. So for example, it would make no sense for a district level request to go to the Office of Criminal Justice, because there's nothing that we could implement in our district that wouldn't actually have to be a citywide piece of legislation. More tips for strengthening submissions. Data, that's #1 reason we get rejections. Stakeholders. So we don't do much of this, and I think we should. So anyone that has come to speak to a committee and done a great job of detailing a problem that's happening in the district, we can solicit them for a letter of support if we submit a request on that topic. And I don't believe we've ever done that, but that is certainly an acceptable. Again, this is very familiar if any of you have done grant writing work. Okay, so that seems like an unwieldy amount of work. So again, the office has been trying to simplify this every year, and we've got it down to these categories. When you go into that spreadsheet, you have 2 options. You can go into the spreadsheet and type in your request yourself, or you can do that Google survey, which I'm going to demonstrate with Sakura or Abby. And we just answer these, what is it, 9 questions. What's your name? Is it a capital request or an expense request? Which city agency is it? And if you don't know and need some help from the office, you can just put, I don't know. What's the specific location in the district where the problem exists? Finish this Mad Lib sentence. The problem is blah. What is the data that verifies that the problem exists? And you don't have to do your own original research. Verified data could be something as simple as a news article from a reputable source that was published in the last year that highlights a specific problem. This is also, you know, the office forwards quite a few, like anything that the office forwards you in an email that says of interest to the committee, that may be because there's some good data in there. Finish this Mad Lib. Result we want to see is X. And then again, what's the data or policy history that supports the proposed idea? It could be local policy history, like Queens has had great success doing X, or it could be policy history from another large American urban city, right? And then finally, who are the partners in the district that could support or partner with us on making the case for this? So who could we ask for a letter of support? You don't have to do it, just put some seeds down there for the office to follow. So that is the same as this. You can either enter it into the spreadsheet or you can just do the Mad Libs Google survey. When you do this Mad Libs Google survey, it will enter it into the spreadsheet automatically. And you can do that on your cell phone or your tablet, whatever. So there's the timeline again, and I think that's it. Yes.
Thank you.
Oh,
This was very helpful.
The amount of thought, work, pulling this apart, helping people understand this is just amazing, Taya. Just, you know, it's like you said, it's an important process. It's probably one of the few things community boards, I guess, sort of really all have to do, to your point. But really, I think you make it, to me, feel like it is important, but also that it's manageable.
Good. Community boards don't get to write legislation, but this is about as close as you all get to having a real seat at the table, I think. So I'm not sharing anymore, right? Good. I was hoping that we could just do one. So like I said, because
I'm
you
going
only
off
have
camera, but I'm listening.
Yep, because you only have this meeting, June meeting, to do your requests. I just want to open this up really quick. And actually, I think Sakura, you might be a little bit further along in the process. So I wonder, all right, can you hear me? Are you here? Yeah. Sakura, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit and ask if you'll volunteer to do the Mad Libs with me. So what you're looking at right now is that spreadsheet, right? So here's the 101 tab. There are all the resources. You can just click on the links and it'll take you to, you know, all kinds of interesting stuff, including, by the way, this board's or this committee's scope and the agencies that you work with the most. So this is the tab that has all of the responses, the city agencies' responses to your requests from last year. And I'm going to intentionally zoom way out so that you cannot possibly read this, because I want you to just look at the blocks of color. So bright, happy, sunny yellow means that you got a yes. Bureaucratic blue means you got a maybe. Red means no. Green means maybe, but they requested more action or revision for this year. And purple means they don't hate the idea, but you're asking the wrong agency, or it's not part of this process, it's part of something else. So I just want to scroll through this because I think you should be really happy how little red there is in all of these requests that you submitted from last year, right? In fact, I would say the majority is maybes and yeses. So I think that's something to be really happy about. It means that the process is starting to get a little bit cleaner. You can go, ED&E hasn't had a chance to do this. Yes, HES has just started, land use has started. So Parks has actually done quite a bit because they used time in their committee meeting to go through last year's responses and pull forward the ones that they want to revise again this year, right? Which you are welcome to do. We could do that during this meeting, or you could do it separately, whatever Ms. Pidebush would like to do. Transportation, John, actually, it made me so happy that John Dew has already started entering on the Google survey, because to me, that means that we've made it very simple and user-friendly. I think he's excited about that. So here's Yucca. So Sakura. All right, come off mute. So we're gonna use her project as an example. And this is also sort of replacing the youth council updates this week because two of our members are away. I mean, they're so busy. They're so busy at this time of year. We want to congratulate Madison. She has just, her track team has just gotten into something pretty big. So that's why she's out today. So Sakura, if you were considering your line of research for your project so far, would you say it's a capital request or an expense request? And just to refresh, is it a one-time, large-scale, possibly physical or expenditure that is going to cost more than $50,000 and is going to have it last for at least 5 years? Or is it an expense request, which means it's something smaller, lighter weight, and more immediate? You just guess.
I think smaller.
I think so too. So let's put in expense. And this is just a spread. This is just a worksheet. So there's, you really don't have to worry about getting anything wrong. Let me just pull up my notes on your project, Sakura. So, because I don't think you will know the answer to this one. Do you happen to know what city agency would be involved with your request?
I do not know.
Yeah, that's no problem. I think for a lot, remind me, is it still gender and youth safety issues in public transit?
Yes.
Okay, so this one, a lot of folks are just not going to know, and that's okay because that's the office's job. So we know that that's the Department of Transportation and possibly the DOE, but we can only send the request to one agency because it's an expense request, right? Sakura, is there a specific BKCD2 location?
I think what we had spoken about earlier was just sort of starting in this district. So I think maybe just District 2. I don't know if that's the right answer.
No wrong answers. So it has to be in District 2 because this is the district statement of needs. And that was kind of a trick question, so I'm going to let you off the hook a little bit, Sakura. So Sakura's project is about gender and youth safety issues in public transit, and it's based on observations she's had in several transit stations in BKCD2. So she could pick a specific location, but I would suggest leave it really drafty for the draft phase, and we'll just get back to that later. So I bet you can finish this problem though. Sakura, in your own words, in like one sentence, the problem is.
The problem is concerns around.
Ooh, I hate typing in public. Concerns around.
Concerns around taking public transportation as a teenage girl.
Great. And I'm also going to let you, so she's actually prepared a whole Google Doc. So she definitely has data that verifies the problem exists. So I'm going to just say link to doc when you get a chance, okay? And if you could say in one sentence, what's the result that you want to see?
More concrete signs of safety on the subway.
Okay, she actually, again, got more specific in her doc, but that's fine for now. And ditto here, she's done a whole report. And is there anyone in the district, or have you found any nonprofits or orgs in your research that might be willing to say, yes, we agree, this is a problem and we would be willing to help you work on it?
I'm keeping my eyes peeled, but I haven't come across anything yet.
Okay. And she's done. That's really enough for now. So in this first round where the committee's just brainstorming, it really can be that sketchy, that sketched, right? It doesn't have to be complete sentences. Feel free to leave it loose like this, because you'll have a chance at your September meeting to sort of discuss and convince each other to vote for it as the most important thing. Abby, no pressure. Are you ready to do something similar?
I'm not, just because I'm still waiting on so much information.
Yeah, that's fine. They've been, yeah, that's totally fine. They're still deep in it.
Excuse me, can Abby just give us an example of what it is she's working on without getting into detail?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm working on essentially surveying all of the public schools and most of the private schools in BKCD2 about what resources they offer their students in terms of like enrichment opportunities, extracurricular opportunities, like career advancement type things, and sort of college placement services as well.
Okay, thank you. That sounds very interesting. Thank you.
Dorothea,
Are
I'm actually gonna brag on Abby a little bit, because Abby, I know you said you weren't ready, but I just opened the doc and looked at it, and I actually am gonna read this because I think it's pretty complete and could be entered. So she actually said, in BKCD2, there's a massive extracurricular resource discrepancy between public and private school students. It is evident by the makeup of the applicant pool for this very youth council. The district's private schools each have 2 to 3 full-time personnel whose titles and daily work are dedicated to finding enrichment opportunities and placing their students. Meanwhile, the public schools are under-resourced, relying on teachers volunteering after school hours, etc. And she's got a list of what exists. She's working on an inventory of student lifetime titles. So she's pretty far along.
That sounds really, really good because the disparity between the systems is just so grossly unfair. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Dorothea. I just, and I think this is very important to explore and document. You're really talking about high schools. So I think rather than saying like all the schools or schools, I think saying high schools, then it's clearer, like where even in the DOE the accountability would be, because there are high school leaders, etc. So is that what you want, the high schools, or you're saying in general there should be for all schools?
I'm working on the high schools primarily, so I can stick to high schools. Yeah.
Well, wouldn't we, when we all get together to do suggestions and things, wouldn't that be the time to flesh that out so we could all talk about it? I just wanted to just have a sense of what she was working on. That's all.
Yeah, no, it's very important. Yes.
So Ms. Fibush, at this point, it's really up to you. Each committee has done this differently. Some committees have chosen to have a working meeting where, you know, we all look at that spreadsheet together and brainstorm in the moment. Or you could just choose to do it offline and have one, you know, some of the committees assign, okay, everybody enter 2 ideas by next meeting. It's really up to you to drive the process from here.
Yeah, thank you. This was very helpful. Each year I learn more and more about this process. I would like to suggest to the committee that we each take one, we talk about it now, like 1 or 2 ideas where we will think about during the month and then write these phrases and sentences into the document. So it should be based on like our interest or what we're passionate about. I mean, you can change your mind, but like if we know
When we revisit
we're dealing
last
with
year, though?
libraries or public housing or, you know, after school programs, do people feel that that's the way to go? And
I have a
then next
question.
month we'll talk.
I'm sorry, Betty. Are we really going to be doing most of our concentration on what our youth council is doing? Because they're spending some time putting, I believe they were trying to put things together for the statement of district needs, or am I mistaken about that?
They were doing, my understanding is they were doing their own particular research and inquiry into like a specific one topic and kind of taking it through all the different categories. So like, for example, I know one year I was very excited about that we should have more social workers for the homeless people who are hanging out in the libraries all the time. So if I was doing that, I would try to talk to someone, get some facts or data, and then write that like all across. So it'd be like one or two topics that each of us, would be especially passionate about or just agree to do. I mean, over the years, we come up with somewhat similar things. We want more after-school programs or school playgrounds to be fixed, or, community centers. We tend to be, in similar lines of thought, but I think each of us could look at, let's say, two, just to write it all across. Does that make sense? Do people want to do that?
Betty, you actually got a yes to this request last year.
Oh, which one? Oh, my
This one.
social work is in the libraries. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I think we need to really formally look at this together. I'm open to so many other variations of what this process can look like, but it's a missed opportunity if we're all not looking at the feedback we've gotten. And the color coding that was done seems to then, I don't know, potentially dictate what somebody wants to run with, right? But I don't want to ignore this. Like, you just brought that up, and it's like, wow, we didn't even know that this might be happening. And do we want to ask the library about it at some point? Like.
Well, I mean, I would be curious now,
start here.
did it really happen? They're saying they're trying to do it. They agree with the request. What does it look like on the ground?
Exactly.
Right, 100%. When they're coming back and they're sharing out at every meeting, I love it. But maybe also they can just tell us, hey, did you see any of these funds yet?
Exactly.
Well, we don't have a quorum, so we can't take a vote. But can we do something by consensus that we would think it would be better that if we all set aside a meeting or something to discuss as a group? Because a lot of times when you're together, one person says something that triggers you, and you sort of come to an agreement as to what works best from the whole, as opposed to an individual standpoint, because we're all working towards pretty much the same thing. That's
I
just a suggestion.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. But and we will be doing that in June, but I was thinking to prepare for June, we can each write our ideas so that we have a robust thing to work off of.
Okay.
Actually, these two that I'm highlighting right now also came out of this committee, and they have this one, healthy eating curriculum has already been funded, which is great. And Betty, I think this was one of yours, but the response was that CD2 is located in a borough without identified high school seat need. And location for schools is based upon site and funding availability. Therefore, the agency cannot get priority to funding. So they're starting to get more detailed about why they're saying no, which is also good.
Well, I personally disagree with their response because this is a part-time program that gives career. So maybe we have to reword that, but yeah, that's helpful to know.
Right, that is helpful, Betty, right? I was thinking that. I think so do we need better data so that response is not an appropriate future response, right? We're not saying there's a general need for any high school seats. You're defining a population very different.
Unfortunately, what it might mean is that these rates, 12.7% unemployment, may mean that those are not bad rates, which you can interpret that the way you want.
Sure. Yeah, fair enough.
Well, their response was about seat need, and we're not saying about building a physical building necessarily. We're talking, maybe we shouldn't be talking about a building or a school. We should talk about more, infusing more of these type of programs into the schools that we have. And we know that that's something that the mayor talks about a lot. And David Banks went to a CTE school, went to my favorite school, the Harbor School in Governor's Island this week. And it was reported that, yes, he wants kids learning, hands-on learning skills. They're learning to operate the ferries or whatever, that they could get a job. So we can maybe take some of the same ideas and tweak it, reword it, get different data. Yeah, but it's still a need.
And get, I think what Taya had elevated and related it to sort of a grant and RFP. So, you know, we've got the superintendent who comes, et cetera, where it sounds like we should have 1 or 2 or 3 schools within the district who want to have like that career technical program tomorrow. And so that request can get massaged where literally now we're providing them with 3 schools who then have a letter, right? Who say, oh my goodness, this would be so wonderful. And then they may already know the sort of kids in the school and what they wish they had kind of thing, right? I, through work, had a school telling us, you know, we wish we had a culinary tech
Exactly.
program, right? And we know it's at this high school and we wish we had it here kind of thing. So if that was in this district, they would love to write a letter to the community board to say, get me this funding. So that's exciting.
But this goes back to the issue I brought up, that if there's this wholesale switch of superintendents, like we have a little bit of a relationship with a few superintendents now. If they all change jobs or if there's that mobility, we're starting from zero because these new people aren't going to know us and tell us these things. So I think getting that information flow between the school, the school leadership, the schools, our committee, vice versa, that's a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we have some info, we've got the relationships. So I think if we're starting this process now, what this means, June maybe meeting is what we're saying. And then there's sort of the summer. I don't know when any of that would change, but listen, end of the day, regardless of how little power we may have, when you invite a superintendent to the community board meeting, they're showing up no matter how many days they're in the job, or they're sending somebody in the office. So I don't sort of see that as an obstacle for us. If we have a brand new superintendent, they're going to want to come. And if it's about getting them money for their schools, they definitely want to come. And I also think last thing is we're not talking about these special pet projects, right? Like some of these things we have on here might be like, hey, an actual functioning science lab for a middle school. Like, I think any superintendent is going to be like, oh, I didn't know it wasn't there. That's awesome. Great. Yes, let's have one.
Okay, so Nick, I agree with you.
Sorry.
Conceptually, but how are you suggesting we invite a superintendent in June?
No.
What are you suggesting?
I am suggesting we start at the data we have, which is that wonderful report of all the amazing ideas we've had and all the feedback we've gotten. And that does not prohibit us from coming up with new ideas, but it gives us a place to start from. And then we can pull in, we go, whatever we're deciding on, it sounds like the next step is reaching out then to the educator, the cultural institution, the after-school provider for a letter of support. But that's secondary to us deciding it's the priority we want to go forward with. I think that's my understanding of sort of how we could.
That's well said, yeah. So for the next few minutes, do you want to continue going through the different items last year? Taya, can you pull that up again? That was interesting.
Unfortunately, we'll have to just scroll through it together.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Housing, community fellows, maternal mortality.
Okay, we have one, renovate or upgrade the NYCHA community facility.
Number 7.
Yeah.
So green meant what here? Green usually means go. I'm confused.
That means green means go. Action or revision is required. It says in regard to renovation of 75, 77, 99, and 110 Waverly, which have been wholly or partially vacant for years.
Oh, that wasn't ours. It was the other NYCHA one, the community center one. I think at Farragut, we wanted some renovation in that community center building space.
Here we go. Repair the gymnasium floor at Farragut. DOE project cost range for gymnasium upgrades. That's perfect data. That sentence is perfect. DOE project cost range for gymnasium upgrades are 50 to 400K, et cetera, et cetera. Actually, this was very robust. In order to fund this initiative, contact local elected officials for appropriations. The agency supports it. Okay, so this was a purple because what they're saying is that this can't be funded through the statement of district needs process. They're suggesting that we approach either the borough president or our city council members for discretionary funding for this one-time capital project.
And can we do that? Or
Which
do we
is
need to engage somebody?
absolutely no, you
We
can do that. The reason, my guess is that the reason that these kinds of requests typically don't come from the community board is because it requires so much research. However, this year we have had 2 really great advocacy presentations to 2 different committees that resulted in a committee vote of support. And in fact, at the next general meeting, you're going to have a chance to vote on one of them as a proposal. They're calling themselves the multi-use hard court coalition. So it's all these sports leagues that need a specific type of hard court, and they don't exist. So basically they started with just a question to the office about, hey, we keep getting kicked out of places, we don't know where to play, here's the problem. And so you work through this process, but they've been working on this data for 6 months together and they've done a great job. But yes, you absolutely can do this advocacy work, Nick. It's just a lot of work. So typically this work is done by nonprofits, right? But it can come out of committee.
So I don't understand when we get this response that we have to contact the elected officials. Is it someone, I mean, I know, I totally recognize that you've been managing the office single-handedly, but if one had a robust staff in the district office, would the district manager or the assistant district manager be reaching out? That would probably be in like Crystal Hudson's district, the Farragut houses.
Right. The key word in this response is appropriations. So there is a whole process for discretionary funding, which essentially is a small grant application process.
Yeah, my agency does that all the time. So you're saying literally
Yes.
the community board as an entity
Absolutely.
can be the one to fill out that request.
Yes.
So
fact,
interesting. But
one
then
of the
that means the
resources,
office would have to write that.
yes. One of the resources, I don't think it's in this 101 doc, but I think I emailed it in the last month or so. Let's see if I can find, I don't know if I can find it right now, but I recently emailed the board one of those of interest to. It was a list published by the Brooklyn Borough President's Office of all of the discretionary fund projects that were funded last year. And some of them did come out of the community boards. Do you guys remember recently the Black History Month special edition Brooklyn Public Library library cards?
Yeah.
That was a project proposed by the Youth Education Committee of a different community board. So
Very cool.
that is totally possible, but it requires, I think it's essentially whether committees do need to decide fundamentally, do you want to be a learning committee? Do you want to be an advocacy committee?
Well, I think we can do both though, maybe.
Yes.
I mean, it's always, it is always a struggle, but you know, if I think to your point here, if this is something that's been coming up often, and I think Sam Johnson for sure has elevated this, but I'm sure others have, at some point it sounds like, which I did not know, we can also be empowered to solve some of these problems potentially.
Can you see this matrix? Can you
Yes.
see this? That might be a good way to visualize sort of the different types of activity that community boards and specific committees can do, right? So there's a scale of reactive to proactive, and there's a range between learning and doing. So when we schedule guest speakers that approach us, that is a reactive learning experience. When we curate guest speakers, that is a proactive learning experience, right? Action reports and statement of district needs is proactive doing, and reviewing LPC and SLA applications is reactive doing. So there are many types of action that committees can take.
This is very helpful, this diagram. Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff I do in my free time.
Appreciate it. Yeah. So is there anything else on there that we asked for and got some feedback on? Because that's interesting. That might be something we want to talk about, moving that forward if more people are around in June. The Farragut one.
Yeah, that seems like a great one. I think a purple is a really hopeful sign. But again, they're saying that this is outside of this process. So this would not actually, you don't have to do this now. You could do this at any time because it's not, they're explaining that it's not part of the statement of needs process.
Okay, that's a good point. Thank you for that, Taya. So that might be something to tackle November on.
Exactly.
Because I think the discretionary, if I recall, they had to get their act together by April-ish. Like, so all the applications had to be in around April for this money.
I think that's exactly right. If I'm remembering, I believe that the city council and borough president discretionary fund applications open in January. I believe that's correct. Did this come from you all? Hiring and training of school nurses? Or was this us? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so here's another one. They don't hate the idea, you're just barking up the wrong tree. So hiring and training of school nurses, our district suffers from extremely high pediatric asthma rates, et cetera. You remember this one. So their response was, funding for this type of program is decided at the local level. Contact the borough field support centers for the specific school.
Okay.
Interesting answer.
I'm gonna, let's go into that a little deeper, because I worked for one of those field support centers, and they were totally at the mercy of the Department of Health on this. So they didn't have a budget. They couldn't say, well, we need a nurse here rather than there, or share the nurse part-time. And now there's such a nursing shortage. I don't even know if this is worth bringing up again.
Actually might be the bigger problem, Betty. I don't know if another one of those of interest to the board. The state, the governor actually just launched a grant program that is going to send 1,000 new people to nursing school for free because the nursing shortage is so dire.
Good. That's good. That's starting way before the problem is in the school. You need to train identify a workforce, train them,
right?
You know, get them credentialed. That's a long range solution, but that's very good.
My hunch is that given the school, the nursing shortage, this just may not be fundable this year, right?
Right, I agree.
Yeah, and I think if at some point we even decide though, Betty, I mean, you having sort of that inside experience though, and us having access, and this comment gives us an ability to sort of dig and do more research so that we can sort of, you know, we can respond to that weak comment, because that's a little bit of a weak comment, right? As if the money is just sitting there unlimited and they're, you know, if they had one less catered lunch, you know, they can have their nurse or something like that. And so we probably have to go back to that office in CB2 and the superintendent. And it's like, okay, is this statement resonate? Is this real? Or what do you have to say about it? And they probably have a lot to say about that statement about why they have no money for nurses.
Did this one come from this committee or from ED&E?
Which one?
Create and incentivize job training programs.
That wasn't us.
Okay.
No, that was
Economic development.
Yeah.
That's Flanoy.
Yeah.
I think that might be everything for Yucca. Just turn that around. Yep. Now, it might be worth it. Of course, this list only represents the ones that were voted to the final list by the full board. So if it didn't make it to this list last year and you still feel strongly about it, that just means that the request needs to be restated so that it's more appealing to your fellow board members, right? I think this one, was this you? Increased collection.
I might have written it, but just as a person, it really should belong to Hess because it's about DSNY. But I mean, I wrote it because I'm obsessed with this, but.
My read of this is, I mean, they're not going to be that explicit, but my read of this is that DSNY's budget was slashed during COVID, and you know, we'll think about it once the budget gets reinstated. That would be my guess.
Yeah.
It also, I think that this would be stronger if it were more specific. So instead of 4 schools, we should probably identify, if you wanted to revisit this one, Betty, I think it would be stronger if we identified specific schools. I know that you've had your eye on Brooklyn Tech, right?
Right, but it's all school, like if you're walking on a Saturday morning in front of any school, I mean, all the ones in my neighborhood certainly, they're piled with trash that's not going to be picked up till next week. And then that adds to the rodent problem. But that's not this committee's work, so I can.
But it could be. But I think, and the point is, you could just pick a school and get a letter from them, and it makes it more compelling. And if one school has a better dumpster, that might be for the future if it works.
That's right.
What's needed to then say, okay, let's get it here, let's get it there, let's get it here. So that's what I'm hearing in this process. We cannot impact change across an entire system. Let's pick a few places that we can maybe.
Yes, and Betty, the reason I showed that breakdown of the 7 categories that DCP, the DCP policy categories, is to encourage you guys. I don't think you should feel stuck, siloed in the working committee titles of this community board. Because you may have noticed, you know, none of the youth council members are actually submitting proposals about anything related to youth education or culture. Right? So if you feel strongly about this, and more importantly, because you are so knowledgeable about waste and compost, I think this is just an invitation to make this stronger for next year. I also, as I'm reading this, I think it could actually, it's 3 different requests. 1, increase collection and appropriate pickup of scheduling for X, Y, Z specific schools. 2, pilot different types of holding receptacles to fit each site, such as these examples from other major urban cities that are working. And 3, explore alternative types of dumpsters and compactors, such as these examples from other major urban cities. Okay, what else? What was this? This was public health, cameras, illegal dumping, oops. Pedestrian safety, school nurses, we did that one. Gymnasium, we did that one. Public housing, park signage, drainage, parks, lots of parks. Okay. Ooh, lots of parks, wow. I think these are all at the bottom. Sorry, these are all going to be parks because I moved them to the bottom because let's show more of this. This column is for committee notes and follow-up. It's because Parks has already gone through and cherry-picked the ones that they want to pull out again for this year, so they're all at the bottom. So that's it for Yucca.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Yeah, so I think we need, and I can write to the others, you know, who aren't here, to Sam and Alec Duffy, to think about specific requests, and that we're going to have an in-depth meeting in June. Unless there's something that has to be brought to our attention, we're not going to invite just speakers to speak unless they need a vote or, you know, something like that. And we'll really delve into this more, but that everybody on the committee really think about a few things that you really want to delve into. Does that sound about right?
It sounds great. I have already have an idea that I want to ask if there's help with before then. I'm not sure, just to get this ball rolling since we're going on break. So figuring out whatever the right ask is of increasing, you know, social, emotional services in schools for young people, especially considering the obvious, you know, data we see after COVID, but I'm sure before that we have plenty of data that nobody was doing enough. So, would have to massage what are we maybe literally asking for, if it's literally social workers or something. But some of the, I think some of maybe a problem that is happening beyond the literal problem of the kids and more suicidal ideation and all kinds of stats that are out there. The city is literally cutting community school funding at the same time, which is the vehicle often to get mental health services into schools. So they seem to be working backwards here. And so I'm wondering if we could write some requests to get some of these services in schools.
Keep that on your mind and you'll be the lead person on that statement. That sounds very important.
I don't know if the superintendent can help. I'm bringing this up because we know the superintendent, I guess. And so it's like, does he already have knowledge of, he's got some community schools in this district that are getting cut. He doesn't have social workers at certain schools already that should have, or there's a higher need. Like he knows the need for this big ask. And we need to know, I think, the gaps from him of, okay, so this is the big ask, but we need a refined ask. So tell us about your specific schools. I think
I'll reach out to him soon.
Thank you.
Okay. Unless he loses his job, but
Oh,
yeah, I
God.
will reach out to him.
Is he,
I'll
I mean, is this
compliment
happening
him.
in weeks? Is this,
What?
how quickly is this happening?
Well, he's going to be interviewed this Friday at 5 o'clock, which is a horrible time. This Friday at 5 o'clock, right before Memorial Day weekend, when everybody's on the road.
That's pretty
But
bad.
at any rate, I could, after that, I will say, oh, I saw you on the interview. You were awesome. And also we have to talk about this. So I can reach out to him. Yeah. Because there will be there are specific gaps. And I just had lunch today with a friend who's a retired principal who keeps very close with his school community, his prior school community. And he said the absentee rate is off the wall. Kids just aren't coming to school. And as one of our youth said, there could be like issues with the public transit, in the subways, people don't feel safe. I think they're just so despondent. And then with this latest school shooting and the shooting on the subway this weekend, I think kids are really feeling like scared and hopeless. So it's a very sad time. Because if they're not going to school, I mean, all the things in the world, they have to get there. So.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's so much of the work, right? Of a school, including a community school. If the kids aren't there, there's nothing to do, right? And so, what resources do schools even have? And maybe that's part of the ask then too. So it's beyond SEL, maybe there's an attendance funding need separately, because that's a massive part of community school work too, right? So they're not coming. Who has the time to figure out why and solve that problem? Not the secretary or the social studies teacher,
That could be the students. It could also be a parental problem. So that to me is a two-folded thing, because you don't know whether or not, what's going on in the home. Are they being encouraged to go to school, or because of COVID and people being out so long, everyone has just gotten a little bit more comfortable and think that they can still try to pick up something, even though the remote learning is not going on anymore. So I think that's something that's more, I'd say, family oriented as opposed to just the student.
100%, Dorothea, 100%. And that's the, that's why it's so sad that the community school funding is getting smaller, because that is a massive component of community school work, is engaging parents and families, because young people come from there. So when they're not showing up, it's usually an issue stemming from the family. And so what are we doing about it?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move this along. I just got a notice from my battery that my battery is almost out. So at any rate, we do have, but we have 4 of us. So we don't have quorum. So we're not doing the minutes. We have someone here from the community who wanted to make a community announcement or share. That person is Evan. Evan, this would be your time to speak.
Thank you, Betty, and thanks everybody else. Also, Taya, thank you for helping us to get to this point. I wanted to make a quick announcement. I'm from Urban Space, and we run the holiday markets in Bryant Park, Union Square, and Columbus Circle. We are working in unison with parks and the local bids to bring a holiday market in 2022 to Brooklyn. And we are, scheduled to meet with the borough president's office next week to go over, our preliminary schedule and layout and things along those lines. And I also wanted to recognize that this would typically go in front of Parks and Rec Committee. However, with our, timeline that we have in place and you guys going on recess, we wanted to make sure we started to get this on the community board's minds sooner rather than later. So that is my announcement. We're very excited to work with the community and really bring the small business owners and entrepreneurs a great activation for the holidays.
Would this be for the Cadman Plaza area by Borough Hall, or is this another site that you have in mind?
This is directly in front of Borough Hall. So from Girolamo up to, I want to say the Green Market that's currently operating at Borough Hall.
Cool.
Okay, awesome. Well, I really appreciate you guys giving me some time to present that. We will be presenting formally to the Parks and Rec Committee, but wanted again to get this in front of you guys as soon as possible.
Fabulous. I wish you good luck with it, and I hope we weren't too boring about our other matters. So
no, not at all.
Yeah, and
Thanks
feel
again,
free
guys.
to come back and join us anytime. And we're certainly part of the cultural landscape of downtown Brooklyn. Yeah.
And what's more
That's
cultural
fantastic.
than shopping in America?
That we are a culture of shopping. But shopping creates waste, and we won't go into the trash.
There you go.
Okay, Betty, that's enough.
You're right.
Let's talk about shopping.
We love shopping, as long as it's all compostable. Okay. Anyway, is there any other business to come before the board tonight? So I thank everyone for their time and ideas. And do I have a motion to adjourn? Nick? And second, Santia, and it's 7:52. And I'm sadly going to have to write the minutes because I don't think we have a secretary. Okay.